At home, we were on top of the world. Our restaurant, 11 Madison Park, had recently received 4 stars from the New York Times and a couple of James Beard Awards, too. But when my chef partner Daniel Hume and I arrived at the cocktail reception the night before the awards for the 2010 World's 50 Best Restaurants, we understood. This was a whole different ballgame. Imagine every famous chef and restaurateur you've ever heard of milling around, drinking champagne and catching up with friends. And not one of them was talking to us. I'd never felt so much like a freshman at a new high school trying to figure out where to sit in the cafeteria. Not even when I was a freshman. It was a huge honor to be invited. The 50 Best Awards had begun in 2002, but they'd become immediately meaningful in the industry. First of all, they were decided by a jury of 1,000 well-regarded experts from around the world. And nobody had ever considered before how the best restaurants on the planet ranked against one another. By doing so, the awards gave these restaurants a push to become even better when they might have been content to rest on their laurels. The award ceremony itself was held at London's Guildhall. So regal and imposing it might as well have been a palace. As Daniel and I sat down, more than a little intimidated, we foolishly tried to gauge where we were going to land on the list based on where we were sitting relative to chefs like Heston Blumenthal of England's Fat Duck or Thomas Keller of Per Se, both of whom had been in the top 10 the year before. I guessed 40. Daniel, always more optimistic, guessed number 35. The lights went down, the music played. The MC for the night was a handsome, debonair Brit. And while I'm sure there were all the usual formalities and introductions and thank you for comings before the bomb dropped, in my memory, there was little preamble before the man said, "To kick it off, coming in at number 50, a new entry from New York City, 11 Madison Park." That knocked the wind right out of us. We slumped over and stared at our feet. Unfortunately, what we couldn't have possibly known, because it was our first year at the event and because we were the very first restaurant called, is that when they call your name, they're also projecting your image onto a gigantic screen at the front of the auditorium so that everyone can see you celebrating your win. Except we weren't celebrating. We were at the very bottom of the list. Mortified to see our dejected faces on the 30-foot-tall screen, I elbowed Daniel, and the two of us mustered a smile and a wave. But it was too little. Too late. An auditorium filled with the most celebrated chefs and restaurateurs in the world, our heroes, had already borne witness to our devastation. The night was over for us before it had even begun. At the reception afterward, we ran into Massimo Bottura, the Italian chef of Osteria Francescana, a Michelin 3-star based in Modena, and number 6 on the list, not that we were counting. He saw us, started laughing, and couldn't stop. "You guys looked pretty happy up there." Fair enough, but Daniel and I weren't laughing. It was an honor to be recognized as one of the 50 best restaurants in the world. We knew that. Still, in that room, we had come in last place. We left the party early and headed back to our hotel, where we grabbed a bottle of bourbon from the bar and sat, ready to drown our sorrows, on the steps outside. We spent the next couple of hours moving through the 5 stages of grief. We'd staggered out of the auditorium in denial. Had that really happened? Then we got mad. Who the hell did they think they were? We breezed through bargaining and spent the better part of the bottle on depression before settling into a state of acceptance. On one level, it's absolutely ridiculous to call any restaurant the best restaurant in the world. But the importance of the 50 Best list is that it names the places that are having the greatest impact on the world of food at a given moment in time. The techniques that Spanish chef Ferran Adria pioneered at El Bulli introduced molecular gastronomy to the world. René Redzepi championed foraged and wild-caught foods from the land and water surrounding his Copenhagen restaurant Noma, and a local food movement was born. And if you've eaten out or walked down the aisles of your local grocery in the last 10 years, you've felt the impact those innovations have had on my industry and beyond. These chefs had the courage to make something no one had made before and to introduce elements that changed the game for everyone.